Is H2O, Doc.H2O Days and Evenings. Julien Godefroy and Noémie Perlin will talk for the Doc Postdoc groups, and they will give us a feedback on those evenings and days.
Okay, alors bonjour à tous. Du coup.
So hello everybody, my name is Julien Godefroy from the US laboratory. My name is Noémie Bernard. We're going to present to you what the doctoral, postdoctoral working group did. So we're part of the group, but there are also other people who are part of the group. So you got the names of the team up here on the screen. So we started with an idea that was there was a lack of a community between doctoral and postdoctoral students. There were links, but they weren't very well developed. So between postdoctoral and doctoral students, so there were people that belonged to different laboratories. We wanted to create networking opportunities so that people could discuss and exchange. And so we developed some tools and events that might be useful for these people in their research work, but also for their professional life later on. And now we're opening up events to people who come from the masters in IWS, and we're also giving the masters and labeled masters. So there was an event organized already, the H2O Objective Pro Day, that has already been organized. That was this year's. So we repeated the event again this year, and it occurred yesterday. And then it mainly took place in the evening. Let me go through the content. So H2O Lyon evenings are about encouraging meeting and exchange between PhD students and young researchers who belong to the H2O community in Lyon. The idea is to create events that make it possible for discussion between these people, but that also allow them to pick up new skills that might be useful for their research or for their postdoc or doctoral research, but also later on in their professional career. So the format chosen was an evening format on a quarterly basis. So we chose this configuration so that as many people as possible could join us during these events. So the idea was to have something more regular than just a yearly event, because we really wanted to boost the network, the H2O network. So this format makes it possible to organize workshops so that skills can be developed or new things can be learned. It's very much focused on something that's multidisciplinary as well, and that goes hand in hand with the H2O community. We also wanted something that was quite informal and friendly. So 3 evenings have already been organized, and a 4th is planned for January. So during these evenings, the idea is not to repeat what's already been done in different labs or doctoral schools in terms of training or discussions or exchanges. So the first evening took place on a barge on the Rhone. There were 37 participants. Most of them were doctoral students. So the discussion was a discussion that took place at the start of the year. So there was an introduction to H2O Lyon, because it's not easy when you arrive inside of a community to know what the H2O Lyon actually does. So the doctoral students and postdoctoral students presented the lab so that people could, and the other labs that are part of the community, and they also presented the links with water. And then there was a speed working session organized to encourage discussion between all of the people present at the evening event. So the second evening that was organized during the IS Rivers conference last summer. So this event was organized where the aim was to bring together young researchers, doctoral students, but also participants at the conference. The idea was to encourage international exchanges. So for that evening, we focused on the content of the conference. So we organized a sketchnoting workshop. So we imagined a fairly simple illustration means to illustrate each session that took place over the course of the day as part of the conference. And for the last evening, well, this took place in the Sinclair factory. So this was interesting because the event took place after the start of the year, and so we had people from the master's student taking place as well. So there were two phases. First of all, there was a guided tour of the Sinclair plant, and then a fresco was built with the association called Odyssey. So this fresco also provided the opportunity to talk about everything relating to water and future prospects. Different people contributed different types of knowledge, thanks to the postdoctoral students and doctoral students who were present during the evening. So now we're going to talk to you about the Objective Pro evenings. So we already mentioned this last year. The objective was to make it possible for the doctoral, postdoctoral students, but also master's students in IWS to talk about career opportunities after a PhD, but also the idea was to help them to develop their skills, to help them network. The idea was to allow them to meet up with practitioners, people from the world of research or from the business world generally, so from quite a broad sector. So we organized some evenings that were similar to those from last year based on the feedback that we had. So we started with presentations given by people doing a PhD, working in the water field. So we focused on research, academic research, but also there were people who were from the socioeconomic world. There were also people from the services sector and the public sector. In the afternoon, we spent an hour and a half doing a workshop. In fact, there were 3 workshops to discover more about the use of networks in order to promote and publish research work. Another one focusing on careers and in the academic world. So we went through the different exams, entrance exams, different university conditions for becoming a lecturer, for example. And we focused on the INRIA, for example. And then there was the speed working. So small groups were able to exchange with professionals. For the morning, in terms of the public sector, we had a speaker from the ANSES and somebody from the CELIMA. They presented slightly different contexts. They were different from what we saw the previous year with people who came from the Metropolitan Authority or the National Biodiversity Office. From the services sector, we had people who came and from design and development offices, from the SCAD, for example, that works on fairly traditional work, but then another representative from another office focusing on R&D. And we also had people from the Rhône-Alpes National Conservatory. And we had lecturers and people in charge of research. We had somebody come from a startup. And we presented all of this. And for the speed networking, we provided a list of people. And you've got the list up here. So it was fairly varied. In terms of type of profession, we had research engineers, but we also had consultants. So there were 41 participants altogether. They were mainly from the EWS laboratory, DEEP, the INRIA, and the ENA laboratories. So we had lots of people from the IWS masters, and there was somebody from another laboratory. There are fewer doctoral and postdoctoral students in some labs. That's why there were fewer from other labs. We had 27 doctoral and postdoctoral students and 5 master's students, along with the 3 people who were from the H2O Lyon community. In terms of feedback, we're currently carrying out a survey, but the first words that came up were interesting, informative, and friendly, enjoyable. In terms of the relevance of the content, we had 20 people providing feedback, and we had 4.6, 4.7 out of 5. So things worked very well. People want more. They're interested in everything that we had to offer. So these are some photos that take us back over the day. So I'll leave you with this slide to conclude. Obviously, we haven't finished. There are other actions that will be created. So more Doc.H2O evenings where we'll focus on a more international reach, maybe. More evenings as well that will focus on alumni and the creation of postdoctoral networks. So we really focused on the idea that it was important to create this sense of community for our doctors and our young researchers so that we could make things smoother for the future. Thank you very much.
Before moving on to the question, I would like to tell you that it's a collective group of PhD students and postdoc students where slides with all the who work in a collaborative and efficient manner. We do about 1 meeting a month, which is, of course, not a lot when you consider the work that's produced. And I want to congratulate them all for their involvement and for their ability to implement all this. Do we have questions, comments in the room about on the morning or afternoon? Sorry. Well, it's not a question, more a comment. Your objective is to make the work of those PhD and researchers, students and researchers known. I mean, are you turning to the general public? There is the science festival where researchers explain their work in a sort of a very vulgarized manner. I mean, this is something it's to everybody, by the way. Well, the next evening will be organized in the Musée des Conférences in order to better understand what is scientific mediation and vulgarization. It's not directly an event where we will have to do this exercise, but it is a time where we'll be able to exchange around the thematics. So what we put forward is mainly what we drive within the working group. So we could have to work on proposed thematics which are interesting and which fit within the part link with the socioeconomic players of the EUR. But we haven't discussed that yet.
And looking at the satisfaction rates, it's fabulous. And obviously, it's working well. And I think this has to continue so everyone can grow. I think maybe this can also be adapted to the level of teachers and researchers, because we all need to learn as well and need to do better, and we need input from students, from stakeholders. And I'm just wondering, what kind of format would you suggest if you would adapt this to for again, researchers, teachers, stakeholders?
First, that's for now, our focus is really on the young researcher community, but obviously we could try to adapt something else for researchers and stakeholders. I think one of what we learned is that there's a lot of interest from stakeholders to communicate with researchers, and there's also a lot of interest for researchers to communicate with stakeholders. I know there are events like the conference ES Rivers where we have both researchers and stakeholders that attend the event and that can do presentations. And I think for what could be done are events at one time events like that, but also events that would be dedicated for meeting stakeholders and meeting researchers. So what we did with speed networking, for example, I think could be adapted by making by having, let's say, stakeholders come and talk with different persons that work on different projects, and the opposite, so having researchers talk to stakeholders. And that's really easy to just make connections. And another thing that could maybe be done is something similar, but where the goal would be maybe project oriented, like make groups of interdisciplinary researchers with some stakeholders, and together you have 1 hour to build a project and then present it to other people.
Merci Julien, merci Björn pour cette remarque qui est très intéressante. Effectivement, c'est qu'il y a des choses sur...
So this says a lot of things about what we could go, but just to come back to how the formats was designed, well, we started from the working group by saying, okay, what do they need? And it is on their ideas that we built the events. And we could very well imagine things where we would include the researchers and practitioners to see what would be the best suited format. That would be a key for success of those formats. We started from the needs expressed by the community we wanted to talk to. And yesterday, for example, was good because we had professionals who came to see us and said, okay, we would like to do this or that, and we think this is interesting, especially on exchange with researchers. So it will be this afternoon. There will be at the end of the day. There will be.